Alright, I am back with another video, and on a Tuesday of all things, you're getting a bit of a bonus video today, and if you want to know why, stick around till my end of video ramblings to find out. Nothing big, I assure you, but, you know, bit weird that I would upload on the Tuesday. It's outside my usual upload schedule, but I'll tell you why at the end of the video if you choose to stick around. Anyways, today we are building Thor, the God of Thunder. Now, long-time viewers of the channel will actually know that I've taken a swing at this before with my Fallen Thunder God concept, in where I mixed some thunder and reverberation gear along with some gear that made you a bit drunk in order to kind of create a Thor-like build, more based on the God of War Ragnarok Thor than maybe the Marvel Cinematic Universe one. And I've gone for something similar here. However, back in that video, the concept was undecided. I had a bunch of different ways that I wanted to do it, and I couldn't decide on any of them. However, here, I think I've got a pretty solid concept that gets all the things that I wanted to get with Thor that I otherwise wasn't able to previously, and I think you guys will enjoy this one quite a lot, so let's get into it. Now, this is one of those builds where you can kind of take the levels in any order you like, but I definitely recommend starting with Fighter, and then from there, choosing what you want to prioritize. But we are going to be kicking things off as a Fighter here. This is going to give us a fighting style, and because we are using a two-handed Warhammer here, well, I say that, you can go with Great Weapon Fighting, although I actually do end up one-handing a Warhammer in this build, so I actually think dueling could work just as well, and is probably what I'm going to go for here, but you can pick Great Weapon Master if you'd rather two-hand the Warhammer. As for our ability scores, they're going to look a little strange, but bear with me. We're going to have Strength at 16. This may not seem strange now, but as we kind of get into the leveling scheme, it will feel a bit strange, and you'll see why. Dexterity is going to be at 14. This is about where I want it to be for what we've got. It's slightly on the lower side, but it's better than nothing. Constitution is also going to be at a 14 here. I would like this higher, but this is as high as we're going to get it. And finally, Charisma is also going to be at a 14. This is going to be a stat that's going to be quite important to us later on, so we want to get it at least at a decent level, but unfortunately this build is quite a bit multi-ability score dependent. We want Dexterity for AC, Strength for our attacks, Constitution for our health, and Charisma for our spellcasting, so it's a little bit tricky, and unfortunately we are left with one leftover ability score point, so we'll put it in Wisdom. Because, I don't know, it's not going to make a difference because it's an odd number, but hey-ho. As for our ability scores, I believe I went with the Soldier background for Intimidation and Athletics. As such, the Thor in God of War Ragnarok, he is kind of treated as a soldier by Odin, and he's definitely athletic, and he's definitely intimidating, so it makes sense. We have Persuasion here as our human skill, because we are a human here, but you can pick whatever you like here, it really doesn't matter. I don't know if Persuasion would exactly be Thor's prerogative. I could see something like Nature or Insight or something like that being quite good. Perception perhaps as well. And in fact, I think I am going to go with Survival and Perception for our two fighter proficiencies. And our last one can be... I don't know. I feel like he would know quite a bit about nature. Just feels right to me. Also, I will quickly point out the elephant in the room. Yes, we don't actually have the typical level up screen here. This is an interesting bug that has resulted from a mod I am using in order to create these new characters called... I believe it's called the Create a Companion mod. All mods that I use are linked in the description below. And basically, it allows me to create companions, basically full new characters instead of just regular hirelings, pretty much infinitely. And as such, for some reason, this comes with a few bugs. The characters all function completely as they would if you were to play them in Baldur's Gate 3. However, things like the level up screen get a bit weird. As such, we don't actually have one. However, I think this is actually kind of cool. It lets me shake up the visuals a little bit. So, let's keep going. At level 2, now like I say, from this point out, you can take either levels in Fighter, which we're going to be doing now, or levels in Sorcerer, which is the multi-class we're going to be taking later. As for... it doesn't really matter what you take first, it depends if you want to prioritize the martial stuff more, or the spellcasting staff more. We're going to be getting both by the end of the build, and both are going to be pretty strong, but you'll have to choose what you want to prioritize here. I'm going to be showing Fighter first and then Sorcerer, but you can mix it up however you like. So, at Fighter level 2, we're going to be getting Action Surge. Nothing new here, just an extra action to use once per short rest. That was very strange. His clothes disappeared for a minute then. Better make sure I get that fixed. That's new. Anyways, as for our subclass here, we are going to be going with Eldritch Knight. Now, this is the obvious choice here because this is going to allow us to throw our weapon and have it come back to us. Throwing Mjolnir, which is Thor's weapon, his hammer, and having it come back to him is kind of his whole thing. Now, there is a Warhammer in this game that does have homing weapon, meaning that it will come back to you when thrown, regardless of the Eldritch Knight feature. That is the Dwarven Thrower. I thought you had to be a dwarf in order to have the homing weapon effect take place, but that's not actually true. Any race can throw the weapon and have it come back to them. It's just that the Dwarven Thrower does extra damage if you are a dwarf when doing so. And I originally did have that for this build, but I found a weapon that worked even better, and so I decided to go for Eldritch Knight instead, because we have a certain combination of things here that's really going to help this build out. And now, to start, we have cantrips, and here's the thing, because we've dumped intelligence, we kind of just need to take support and utility cantrips from here on out. So Friends and Mage Hand are pretty good options. Mage Hand is not exactly on theme with Thor, but it's the best we can do with just support options. Now, we also get to take 2 level 1 spells here, and we need Mage Armour. We are using clothing with this build, because the fashion, this was kind of the closest I could get to Thor from God of War Ragnarok, and as such, we need Mage Armour in order to wear it, because we're not going to be getting unarmored defense from either Barbarian or Monk, so this is the best way to grab it. And next up, we're going to grab Shield, the best utility spell in the game that's not reliant on our spellcasting stat, so pretty great. As for the expanded spell list, you can take whatever you like here, it really doesn't matter. I feel like Enhanced Sleep or Featherfall would make sense for Thor, as he does do kind of a lot of flying around, and you could simulate that with Enhanced Sleep and Featherfall together, so I'm going to be picking Enhanced Sleep for now. Yeah, his clothes disappear for like a flash of a second. I'm going to need to fix that. Next up, at level 4 Fighter, we do get to choose another spell, and unfortunately, again, I don't really want to pick any of these offensive options. I mean, Magic Missile could still work, but I'm just going to go with Protection from Evil and Good, because this kind of protects you or an ally against the powers of aberrations, Celestials, Elementals, Fiends, Fae, and Undead. 4 kind of fights those a lot, so it kind of makes sense. It's concentration-based, but what else are we concentrating on at the moment? Now, as for our feat, because we are doing a throwing build here, well, partial throwing build, Tavern Brawler is going to make sense, and this is going to allow us to buff up our strength to a 17. So, this is going to give us an odd ability score, so this is why I would recommend picking up Ethel's Boon and the Potion of Everlasting Vigour for a +3. Now, I personally think that the God of War Ragnarok version of Thor, who is kind of a drunkard, he's a bit depressed, and he's constantly trying to basically live up to, you know, what he thinks Odin expects him to be. So I would absolutely be thinking that he, especially if he's fallen from grace, he's fallen to the mortal plane of Faerun, and is trying to reclaim his godhood, he would definitely be making deals with hags and strange potion sellers in order to beef himself up, because what does he give a crap anymore? He just wants strength. So I think it absolutely makes sense. So between that and Tavern Brawler, you're going to have a nice even 20 on our strength, which is good. That's exactly what we want. And it's going to boost all of our throwing stuff by adding our strength modifier twice to the damage and attack rolls of our thrown weapons. So now our hammer, when thrown, has some serious punch behind it. Right, seriously, the sudden nakedness thing is really bugging me. I swear I'm not trying to do subliminal messaging here. Anyways, extra attack at level 5, allowing us to attack or throw our weapons twice in one turn for free, which is pretty good. Well, not for free, it costs an action. And now at Fighter level 6 we are going to be grabbing an extra feat, and this build is quite feat hungry, so I definitely wanted to pick up this extra Fighter feat. And we're going to be taking the ability score improvement. Now, at this point our strength would be 20 if you took everything I said to, so, you know, we don't have to worry about that. Dexterity or Constitution, we would benefit from having these go higher for sure. Dexterity for more AC, Constitution for more health, but Charisma is our main spellcasting modifier, and I'm gonna want to start boosting this up, as we are now going to be heading into Sorcerer levels, so let's start with those. Right, so, at level 7 we're going to be multi-classing over to Sorcerer. Again, you could have taken levels in this whenever you liked. In fact, maybe a 1 level dip early on for some of those level 1 features would have been nice, but we're going to be starting with it now. So, let's start off with our subclass, which I think is quite obvious. We are going with Storm Sorcery. Storm Sorcerer is going to get us a few interesting things at level 1, but namely, Tempestuous Magic. After we cast a level 1 spell or higher, we can fly as a bonus action. Well, there you go. That's basically a 1-level dip to get Thor's hammer throwing and then, you know, he flies. Kind of. It's a momentum thing. But Thor does that, so getting flight in some shape or form made perfect sense here. We also get a bunch of cantrips, and these are ones that we can actually use offensively because we actually have Charisma. Shocking Grasp is a lightning attack, of course we want it, as well as Ray of Frost, because, I mean, you know, Nordic myth, ice, kind of a big theme here. Obviously Thor himself does not use ice, that's more of Loki's thing technically with being a frost giant and all that, but since we are going to be playing around with water in order to get, you know, vulnerability to our electric attacks, we might as well get some ice stuff as well. I mean, why not, right? And in fact, in that vein, we might as well grab any sort of offensive cantrip you like here, it really doesn't matter. I will grab Blade Ward because, again, we are kind of a melee combatant, so maybe getting those resistances would be nice. And finally, you know what? Firebolt, just because it's another range damage option. As for our spells, you can kind of choose whatever you like here. Remember, we've got things like shield and mage armor and all that covered already, so I wouldn't mind picking up something like Chromatic Orb here, but I think the more on-theme things would be Thunder Wave, to be able to push enemies back with a big blast of thunder, and Witch Bolt, oddly enough. I've basically constantly trashed the spell because it's pretty bad in tabletop, and from first glance, those issues weren't really fixed in 5e. However, I've come around on it... sorry, not fixed in Baldur's Gate 3, sorry, but I kind of have come around on it a little bit because it's got some interesting applications, and for an early kind of lightning spell, I think it's actually pretty decent for what we're trying to do here, so we'll pick up Witch Bolt now. At Sorcerer level 2, we are going to be getting our Meta Magic, which means we can now choose 2 options to be able to augment our spells, and I'm going to say Twin Spell and Careful Spell. Twin Spell is obvious, allowing us to twin buffing spells if we like, but also Careful Spell I think is quite important for this build. If we're going to be throwing around big lightning attacks, we're going to want to make sure our allies don't get caught in the middle. I mean, to be fair, if they're standing in a line in front of... in a line in front of one of your lightning bolts, that's kind of their fault, but, you know, Careful Spell can definitely help if you're trying to fire into melee, for example. We also do get another spell at this point, and it's entirely up to you what you want to pick, it really doesn't matter. I actually think Featherfall would be great here, we're kind of getting the full movement trifecta, Enhanced Sleep, Flight, Featherfall, you'll be able to move around and pretty much do whatever you like, you know, superhero landing. But we're not making that Thor. We're still making a Thor, just not Chris Hemsworth. Sexy bastard. Oh, I love throwing in things like that. Just a little bit of... Wait, is he into the video? Anyways, let's keep going. We now get to choose level 2 spells, and I quite like Shatter. I mean, we're on the lightning thing, we might as well get a little bit of thunder. We are the god of thunder after all, so we can kind of treat this as maybe we're just kind of bashing something with our hammer really hard, and the reverberation is causing a big thunderclap because Mjolnir is just that heavy. So Shatter is going to allow us to do a bit of extra thunder damage, which is nice. As for our meta magic, of course we're taking Quicken Spell. I mean, of course we're going to take Quicken Spell. I've got to find something to do with things like Subtle Spell, Heighten Spell one of these days, but we just pick all the good ones, man. I mean, they are good for a reason. And then next up, at Sorcerer level 4, we do get another feat, and I'm just going to be taking an ability score improvement and bumping up our Charisma to an 18. This is going to give us a pretty solid Charisma stat all around, which can be boosted to 20 with items or the mirror in Act 3 if you so choose, if you know kind of what you're doing there. So it's going to give us a pretty well-rounded stat spread. As for our cantrips, we do get to pick another one. I'll pick Bone Chill, why not? As for our spells, we do get to pick another one at this level, and it's entirely up to you what you want to take. Misty Step to be able to teleport around the arena. Hold Person to be able to land critical hits. Mirror Image. They're all really good spells. I mean, you could even take something from level 1 like Ice Knife if you want to play more into the cold aspect. It's entirely up to you what you want to pick here. I'll just go with a pretty helpful option that is Hold Person, again, when you're fighting humanoid enemies, which again, I think come up a bit more in Act 3. This can be really helpful. at Sorcerer level 5, we're finally going to be getting our big powerhouse spells. Lightning Bolts being the main one here, a big 8d6 line of lightning damage, which is going to do a butt ton. Also, as a Sorcerer at this level, we're going to be able to get absolutely nothing. Never mind, we're not at level 6 yet. But I would also recommend replacing a spell at this point. Let's take one of those iffy spells we weren't too sure on, perhaps something like Hold Person, because it's not really on theme, and we're going to replace it with something else, and that is going to be Haste, because if you can get Haste on a build, you want Haste on a build. For that +2 to armor class, gaining an extra action, gaining more movement speed, it is the best spell in the game, in my opinion, as long as you can maintain it, which we can. And finally, at Sorcerer level 6, we're going to be getting a ton of cool stuff to add to the build. We have both resistance to both lightning and thunder damage. We now, whenever we hit someone with lightning or thunder damage, all enemies within 6 meters of the enemy that we hit take an extra 3 lightning or thunder damage. Pretty cool. Oh, it's whenever we cast a level 1 or higher spell that deals that damage. My apologies, it's not just when we deal damage. But it's still pretty good. We also get 5, count them, 5 spells just added to our spell list. That being Cool Lightning, which you wouldn't normally get. Sleet Storm, which will allow us to disrupt the concentration of spellcaster. It's not great. Don't use that one. Gust of Wind to knock enemies off balance. Create or Destroy Water to douse enemies in water, making them wet, and that means making them take double damage from lightning and ice attacks, which is awesome. And Thunderwave also gets added to our spell list automatically at this point, so I would replace it from our usual spell list with something else. Now, it's entirely up to you what you want to pick here. Flight would obviously give you the ability to fly kind of unconditionally, but it requires your concentration, so probably not. Pick up whatever you like here, it really doesn't matter. Counterspell is always a useful option. And I can kind of see it being flavoured as like Thor seeing an annoying spellcaster from across the arena, and just seeing them about to cast a spell, so he just throws the hammer at them and says, no, don't do that. I mean, obviously we can't do that visually in-game, but, you know. Reflavoring's always fun. We also do get another level 3 spell at this level, and I've already chosen Counterspell from this little list here, so we can pick something else. Be honest, kind of running out of options at this point. Ooh, I actually kind of like Fear, because what mortal would not fear the God of Thunder's wrath? Oh hell yeah, that's like the tagline for this video. Oh shit, I'm gonna put that in the thumbnail. Hell yeah. And with that, we have finished leveling. So with that, you're going to have a ton of utility here. You're going to be getting the ability to throw your hammer for powerful ranged attacks. You're going to be able to use powerful melee strikes. You're going to be able to haste yourself to be able to just go absolutely crazy on the battlefield with higher AC and the like. You've got really powerful lightning spells and the ability to make enemies take double damage from them. You still have a wide, diverse range of attacks. You've got thunder damage, lightning damage, bludgeoning damage. You've got it all. You're going to be very, very versatile. Unfortunately, as a frontline fighter, we are slightly behind with our lower HP score, only reaching 100, but luckily we took quite a few fighter levels here, so that is going to give us a bit of a bump compared to if we went with more sorcerer levels. But overall, you have a lot going for you here. You've got a lot of versatility, you've got a lot of power, you will be able to do tons of damage, and thanks to the fact that we took both Sorcerer and Eldritch Knight levels, giving us a little bit extra to our total spell slots, we're actually up to level 4, which we wouldn't normally be, so we can hit even higher level lightning bolts, which is great. But let's get into the equipment, and I'll get the main thing out of the way here, the weapon of choice. I already went over how I decided, but the Dwarven Thrower wasn't really worth it for this build over the Charge-Bound Warhammer. The Charge-Bound Warhammer is a lot nicer for a few reasons. Number one, it is obtained much earlier than the Dwarven Thrower. The Dwarven Thrower is locked to Act 3, meaning you'd be waiting pretty much the whole game before you can actually throw your hammer, which didn't exactly feel right. So going with those Eldritch Knight levels early on, meaning you can throw any Warhammer you come across, is really nice. But this Warhammer is just perfect for Thor, because when it is bound as a Warlock or Eldritch Knight's Pact weapon, it gains the following benefits. It gains an additional +1. It's already a +1 weapon at base, so it gains an additional +1, making it a +2 weapon overall. It gains an additional 1d6 lightning damage. Well, I mean, there you go. But also, these elements stack with the Draconic Elemental Weapon buff from the Drake Throat Glaive, and that would allow us to buff it with an additional +1, making it a +3 total, and an extra 1d4 of lightning, thunder, or cold damage, I guess, for this build, our choice. I've just gone with pure lightning here to show that, well, this weapon can do a pretty decent chunk of damage. Two-handing, it's a 1d10 +7, with an extra 1d6 and 1d4 lightning damage, meaning we're doing a lot of damage. I mean, this combination with the ability to throw it as well, getting big lightning damage, and it kind of looks like Mjolnir to me, especially with the lightning, just the hilt is a bit long. I love it. Absolutely love it. Exactly what I was looking for. Now, let's get into the rest of it. As for our ranged weapon, of course, we can just pick up the Darkfire Shortbow. Again, if I'm leaving the ranged slot empty, you can assume that the Darkfire Shortbow is going to work well in this slot. It gives us free resistance and haste. Why not have it? Probably not going to use it for ranged attacks because it's not really Thor's style, but the God of Thunder should be resistant to a lot of damage, and again, getting that haste prior to like total level 11 is pretty good for this playstyle because this can be picked up in Act 2, so you definitely want it. As for our equipment, I've gone with the Diadem of Arcane Synergy. We're going to be inflicting a lot of conditions with this build, so as such this is pretty much always going to be up, giving us additional damage to our weapon attacks equal to our spell casting modifier, which is great. You could use the Birthright Hat instead of this if you would rather focus more on the spell casting and getting your charisma to 20, but I quite like the Diadem here, so we're going to go with it. Next up is the Cloak of Protection. This build kind of needs Armour class. You'll see kind of how we kind of get to a reasonable Armour class, but because of the way this build's set up with slightly lower dexterity, our Armour class does suffer a bit. This build tries to do a lot of things, and while it does do those things well, it doesn't do any of them as well as someone who's specialised in them. If you went for a full throwing build, you'd gain more damage from that. If you went for a full spellcasting build, you'd get more damage from that. But here we get a little bit of everything, and we get everything that Thor is about, which is my main goal here. But obviously, you can build with kind of only one thing in mind instead of the other, and probably get something slightly more powerful, but this build is still extremely effective. Now, moving on from that, we have the Enraging Heart Garb. This was decided because it's going to give us a +2 to our Constitution, giving us a total of 16, which is a nice rounded out amount, which is where we're getting that 100 HP from. And because this is one of the best pieces of clothing to emulate Thor's look from God of War Ragnarok, with the kind of like almost crop top look, because I'll put an image on the screen now, you can kind of see he has like the shoulder armor, but that big gut is just hanging out, that beer belly. This is about as close as we're going to get in game, but I managed to kind of get the color scheme right with the browns and the blues kind of mixed in there with a little bit of the gold. I think it actually looks quite good. I think I managed to get the look pretty damn closer than I did in my original video anyway. And I will quickly show, if we'll just quickly cast Mage Armor here. As you can see, if Thor, you could just turn around, please, on my days, right? There you go, we had Tempestuous Magic for a second there. And as you can see here, we now have 16 AC, which still isn't the greatest, but if you remember, if we have Haste up, that's another +2, giving us a total of 18. And if you combine this with a shield, and I actually quite like the idea of this Thor using a shield, we'd get a total of 20 with Haste, with 18 at the base, which is pretty good, and I'll get into the shield in a moment. But overall, with Mage Armor and the stuff that we have, our AC does turn out pretty decent. Not the best, but decent. As for our gloves, I of course have gone with the Gloves of Belligerent Skies. We're going to be doing lightning damage pretty much all the time, so let's get some Reverberation up in here. Reverberation, basically, I'll go over it quickly. It makes it harder for your enemies to make physical saving throws, and when you stack up 5 turns, you deal a little bit of extra thunder damage and knock enemies prone, and there is nothing more thematic than the God of Thunder hitting you so hard with his hammer that you're just smashed into the ground. How could I not include it here? As for our boots, I have gone with the Water Sparklers. Whenever the wearer stands in a surface of water during combat, it becomes electrified. And if we're standing in an electrified surface, we gain 3 lightning charges. Meaning now we can power up with a lightning aura while still getting that benefit of being able to deal double damage to our enemies, and spreading the electrocuted status effect will trigger the Diadem of Arcane Synergy, so that's how that kind of rotational combo comes in. You cast Create or Destroy Water, and you start getting busy. Now, I understand that the big flaw of this strategy is the fact that we don't actually get, with my leveling scheme that I showed in this video, Create or Destroy Water until level 12. So I would absolutely recommend maybe partnering this character up with someone else who can cast Create or Destroy Water, or maybe getting some way of casting it yourself. There are a few ways of doing it, but I would definitely recommend maybe having this build be a bit of a team player in that regard up until you can make yourself a bit more self-sufficient, or you could take those Sorcerer level first and get it at level 6 or 7, entirely up to you. Again, build this build the way that you like. As for our accessories here, we have the Spine Shudder Amulet. When the wearer deals damage with a ranged spell attack, you inflict 2 turns of reverberation. We have ranged spell attacks, might as well use them. Also, we have the Ring of Spiteful Thunder. Whenever the wearer deals thunder damage to a reverberating creature, so it's just a creature that has turns of reverberation on them, that creature becomes dazed unless it succeeds a con save. And dazed gives enemies disadvantage on wisdom saves, they cannot take reactions, and they lose a dexterity bonus from their armor class. So it's just an overall pretty good debuff that we can add on. And finally, the Sparks Wall. The wearer cannot be electrocuted, because again, we are making these electric surfaces. If we did not have this ring, we would ourselves be electrocuted, and we don't want that, so the Sparks Wall is pretty much necessary. This also gives us resistance to lightning damage. However, we do get that at level 6 of Storm Sorcerer. However, you might be getting this ring before then, so it's just kind of nice to have that resistance regardless of your level. But we do have a couple of alternative options here. If you don't like the idea of the Gloves of Belligerent Skies and you want a bit more throwing damage, throw on the Gloves of Uninhibited Kashigo, allowing you to deal an additional 1d4 damage with throw attacks and attacks made with improvised weapons. So it gives our hammer throwing a bit more of a boost. Combine that with the Ring of Flinging as well, instead of maybe the Ring of Spiteful Thunder, to be able to do that too. So yeah, overall that you have a few options with this build, and obviously I'm recommending the Drakethroat Glaive for Draconic Elemental Weapon to give us even more lightning and damage. I mean, making this a +3 weapon, that's pretty good. That's legendary weapon levels, so definitely worth it. Oh, and obviously, quickly, the shield. I have gone with the real Sparky Sparkwall. This can be obtained in Act 1, giving you a +2 to your armor class, which is always nice, but it also comes with a nice little bonus, Lightning Aura. Lightning Aura allows you to consume 3 lightning charges, which remember is the exact amount the water sparklers give us, to release a jolt of electricity, basically releasing a blast. We kind of get an aura of electricity, and any enemy that enters it takes 1d6 lightning damage and is jolted, taking 1d4 lightning damage each turn and cannot take reactions, and it's removed upon leaving the aura. This aura lasts for 3 turns and only can be used once per short rest, which absolutely sucks, but I mean, I wanted to use a shield on this build anyway to fix up the AC a bit, and so why not get the most fitting one of all? And I know it's not exactly Thor's thing to really use a shield, but I just love how this build looks overall with the cape and the shield. I think it's actually a totally different vibe than either Thor, so I think it kind of mixes the two together a little bit, which I really, really like. He also looks very short now because I've angled the camera in a weird way. There we go. That's a bit better. Anyways, I will have tried to show a little bit of the combat footage at the start, but I understand my intro was a bit short, so you probably didn't see all of it. And I have to say this one was a bit weird. I want to be perfectly honest with you guys, so I present the builds exactly as they perform, and this one is a bit strange. For some reason, the game bugged out, and we dropped concentration on haste midway through for seemingly no reason, because you'll see the saving throw said that I succeeded my constitution save to keep up haste, and then I got it from being prone, and I was lethargic. So I'm guessing if you're not prone while in haste, it drops it, which is stupid, because you haven't lost concentration. I don't get it. So unfortunately, and it kind of shows the problem with testing against the Steel Watcher. The Steel Watchers are probably some of the toughest enemies to kind of 1v1 in this game that I can regularly test with. Back when I used to test with the tutorial boss, he had the similar resistances to what the Steel Watchers have. He just had less overall damage reduction. But as you can see here, the Steel Watchers are very tanky, so whenever I'm testing against a Steel Watcher, I'm actually really low-balling the damage of what's possible. A couple of people said on the Dance Through Illustrated Remastered video that, wow, this build does no damage. It's not actually the build that's doing no damage, it's the Steel Watcher resisting most things, including having a complete immunity to Psychic. So even though this build kind of does, most of my builds will kind of have, especially the physical builds, the magic builds are okay, will have a bit of trouble against Steel Watchers. It doesn't really show exactly how high the damage numbers for these builds can go, because trust me, in regular gameplay, it's a lot higher. So you kind of have to take this with a grain of salt, but I'm still kind of working on the whole Act 3 testing thing, so you'll kind of see. Also, you'll notice the throwing damage for this build is, again, not great. Again, the Steel Watchers have damage reduction, and bludgeoning resistance, which is what throwing damage will do. And as such, with that and the fact that I didn't use the throwing equipment, that being the Ring of Flinging and the Gloves of Uninhibited Kashigo in this run, the throwing damage wasn't great. However, you'll notice as soon as I started casting lightning bolts, the Steel Watcher went down pretty quickly. So it really is a matter of just using the right thing for the right time. If you can bludgeon enemies to death with your hammer and just throw it over and over again, then that will work. Probably definitely more on humanoid enemies. And if you're up against something big that needs to go down, then go for those big lightning blasts. Alright, so I guess I'll get into the end of video stuff now, kind of. I mean, my combat footage is a lot shorter now, so I'll try and find some sort of visual, I guess, to put in the background, but it'll probably be nothing. It'll probably just be me talking. So, why did I make this video today, as I kind of alluded to at the start? Well, YouTube wasn't happy I took a week off. Long story short, basically because the channel kind of took that dip because I wasn't uploading content, now, even though my videos will kind of perform the same as usual, I mean, the Dance of Illustrated Remastered has done really well, it basically has a larger range for highs and lows. So I kind of need to start upping my content a little bit. And while Tuesday uploads are not going to become a regular thing, after the, well, I'll be frank, abysmal performance of yesterday's D&D build, I mean, coming back after a hiatus and then uploading something totally new, which didn't go well, I kind of needed to upload something here just to keep YouTube happy. So you've got this video today, and then we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming from Wednesday onwards. However, I have decided something, and I need some opinions on this. I'm thinking of, I'm going to keep my regular schedule of uploading on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, with my regular content, that being stuff that's related to Baldur's Gate 3. But then on the weekends, either Saturday or Sunday, depending on, I'm thinking that might be when I release some more experimental content, because then that's not really disrupting the overall flow of the channel. You'll still be getting your 3 regular doses or regular videos a week, but maybe leaving a free weekend slot open for D&D builds, maybe gameplay stuff, all sorts of things that are a bit more experimental, allowing me to experiment on things without the channel basically taking penalties because of it. And I don't mean to moan, but again, I like to be honest with you guys. I mean, the D&D builds are off to a rocky start. They take a lot more effort to make than Baldur's Gate 3 videos, and so far, I mean, I only have one video to pull from, but so far producing much less results, similar to my Lethal Company video I made a few months ago, which did even worse than the D&D build. So I'm kind of having to take a step back and think, okay, how am I going to manage this? And I'm thinking 3 videos in the regular slots on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, with maybe a Sunday video every week, which is just something more experimental where I'm having a bit more fun with it and just kind of seeing what sticks. I don't know, you guys will have to let me know what you think of that, and we'll go from there, but that is going to do it from me for now. I won't keep this outro too long. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.